Today we're going to be taking a look at a very long-awaited set, that being 75441 Venator-class attack cruiser. This set just released on January 1st with 643 pieces and a pretty gross retail price of $80 US. However, I'll talk about that more here in a little bit. First off, I just want to say I'm glad we finally have a midi-scale Venator. In 2024, obviously, as many of you guys know, LEGO released the Invisible Hand, and because of that, everyone obviously wanted a Venator to pair with it, but then for some reason in 2025, they ended up releasing an acclimator, which was really cool, just kind of random because it's not necessarily what we are wanting. But then now finally 2 years later in 2026, we have a Venator to pair with that Invisible Hand. On the back of the box, you're going to find another render of the build along with a pretty cool picture of the ship in Revenge of the Sith at the bottom left, and then at the bottom right you're going to find the dimensions measuring 12 inches long and 6 inches tall. And then opening up the box and digging in, on the inside you're going to find 5 separately numbered bags along with your instruction manual, and since this is an 18+ set, by tradition the first few pages of the instruction manual are going to have some information about the ship, which is pretty interesting. There's some cool pictures in here and cool information per usual that you can pause and read if you want to. And then on the inside of the builds, you're going to find some Easter eggs, which are going to be explained out in the instructions here, like this one right here showing an officer briefing a clone trooper, and then this other one which I think is pretty cool showing what's supposed to be Anakin and Obi-Wan's Jedi interceptors. And of course, as you continue building, both of these get covered up and there's no way to access them, but it's still cool that they're included. Taking a look at the actual build here, I do have to say it is a little bit larger than I was expecting it to be. Now don't get me wrong, it's nowhere near the size of an $80 set, however I was just for some reason expecting it to be a bit smaller. But to really put its size and its retail price into perspective, here it is compared to the midi-scale Home 1 that released in January of 2025, and this set has a retail price of $70, $10 cheaper than this Venator, and it released only 1 year ago. As you can tell, they're pretty much the same size, with the Home 1 actually feeling a bit larger because it's not flat like the Venator. It's about the same length, however it's a bit more bulkier and has a bit more going on. And again, it's $10 cheaper at $70. So that already tells you this Venator is about $10 more expensive than it needs to be. But then from there it gets even worse when you compare it to the Executor that released in 2023, which also retailed for $70. And this is where I was like, alright, I knew this set was overpriced, but seeing it next to this Executor that's $10 cheaper and also on shelves right now alongside it made me realize that like LEGO has kind of lost their minds with this pricing. I thought this Venator was maybe give or take $10 overpriced and should retail for $70, but after seeing it next to this Executor right here, I was like, alright, maybe $70 is even too high for it. It should really be about $60 or $65. But no, for some reason in 2026 it is $80. It is $10 more than this Executor that you see next to it that is dang near twice the size. But then of course lastly we have to pair it with the Invisible Hand and recreate the iconic scene, and I have to say they do look really good next to each other, but even this Invisible Hand here is near the same size and it only retails for $55. There's a $25 price difference between these two sets right here, which is just so insane to me. LEGO is literally out of their minds trying to charge $80 for this Venator. But I mean, hey, on the bright side, I guess we can finally pair these two sets with each other, and it does look pretty good. But now actually diving into just the Venator itself, unsurprisingly, it looks pretty solid. It's not perfect though, there are a few things I'm not a big fan of about it, however, I'll get to that here in a second. But one thing I do have to say is they did a really good job with the top of the front half right here. The stripe looks really good, and the Republic Navy logos are also printed pieces, so that's very nice to see. And then just the shaping is really good as well. As you can see here, it kind of slopes downwards from the middle of the ship to the front of the ship, which is accurate and something that's kind of impressive to be able to pull off at this scale. However, at the same time, still talking about the shaping, there is one thing I don't like about it, and that's that I wish it was a bit thinner, and I mean a bit flatter actually. As you can see here, especially the front half, it's just a little bit too thick, I guess, or in other words, just a little bit bulky and kind of blocky, and it's kind of falling short at capturing the sort of sleek look that these ships have in universe, and especially the sleek look that the UCS model is able to capture. Again, it's mainly just the front half, the back half isn't really that bad, but I just wish it was a bit flatter and a bit sleeker. Overall, it's just a little bit more bulkier than I would like. Moving on though, on the front here, you might notice these two clip pieces that stick out the side, and these are actually supposed to represent the cannons that are on the front of these Venators. They're very small and honestly not very noticeable either, but they get the job done. But then moving on from the front section to the back section, taking a look at the bridge area here, it looks solid. They got the shaping down. It's not really as clean as I think it could be. Some areas of it are just a little bit bulky for my liking. However, it still gets the job done. I mean, it looks like the bridge of a Venator. But then moving on from there, under the bridge, you're going to notice the cannons, and these, as you can see, have a very simple design. Honestly, I think they might be a bit too simple. I wish they could could actually rotate. I guess if you want, you can actually point them up and down here. It's kind of annoying because they can break off easily, but you can do that for different posability if you want to. However, for a set of this price, I wish LEGO could have just, maybe tried a little bit harder on these, but they still execute the look decently, I guess. But then moving on from there to the tips of the wings back here, you're going to notice these printed stripe pieces, which again, like the Republic Navy logos, I'm very happy these are printed, because in the past with these mini scale sets, LEGO has cheaped out and done pieces like these as stickers, so seeing that they're printed on this set is definitely kind of relieving. Moving on to the sides here, the greebling looks really nice, and as you can see, the little transparent piece representing the hangar bay door, and the way they did this greebling is actually really interesting. Basically, it's all one piece, as you can see here, just this weirdly shaped kind of arm piece that has a sword on one end and a blaster on the other end, and it's really tricky to get on camera, but basically these slide in here on a Technic pin, and then the arms kind of fold inwards into the side of the ship. Again, it's tricky to get on camera, but it looks pretty cool, and it was definitely interesting to build. Moving on to the back here, taking a look at the engines, this is probably the best part of the build. I just think the engines look really cool. I mean, the engine design on Venators kind of just looks cool in general, but still, LEGO did a good job here. I like how they designed it. They got the staggered look down great, and then even just the tail end of the ship that sticks out in between the engines also looks really good. From there, the bottom side also actually has some detailing on it. As you can see here, you can very easily take it off the stand. It's just held in by Technic pieces. And on the bottom side, you're going to find more printed stripe pieces, which I really enjoy, and then another big red stripe towards the front of the ship, which is pretty cool. However, when you're handling the build without the stand, one thing I do have to say is that it just has a very kind of fragile and flimsy feel. The panels just feel loose and they move around a lot and kind of feel like they're about to fall off. And also, as you can see here, the panel that's the red stripe on the front can pop up and come loose very easily, which I don't like at all. I mean, I have to say that it's cool that you can kind of very easily take the stand off and handle the ship yourself. However, again, it just feels kind of fragile and I'm not a big fan of that. But then from there, you can just grab your stand and very easily put it back on the bottom. And then speaking of the stand itself, it's just your typical midi scale stand design. It's sleek and it looks good and it gets the job done. And then of course on the front here, you're going to have the printed plaque that says Venator-class attack cruiser. But overall, I had to say the set as a whole is kind of just, well, it's a bit underwhelming, actually. Now, don't misunderstand me, that in no way means I think it's a bad set. It looks good, and it resembles a Venator. I mean, it's a solid build, but at the same time, to me at least, it just doesn't feel like an S-tier midi-scale set. And when I say that, I mean like the Executor, or the Millennium Falcon, or even the Invisible Hand. I'd say those are S-tier midi-scale sets, and this one is kind of just like a tier below that. And since it's because, well, a Venator, a midi-scale set we've been wanting for a long time, it's just kind of underwhelming for it to not be as good as the best ones. Again, I don't think it's bad. It's a really solid build. It's just not at the top. And not to mention again, it's stupidly overpriced. This should be like a $65 or $60 set, not $80. So if I had to rate just the build itself, not including the price, I'd probably give it an 8 out of 10. However, including the price and the set as a whole, I'm gonna give it a 6. So let me know what you guys think about this set down in the comments below. If you're new, please consider subscribing. And if you want to check out more of my videos, you can see them on the screen right now.